Hi, this is Matt at AppWorks, and in this video in our basic series, we're going to be looking at 10 really good tips for navigating and working with the graph, the relationship graph in FileMaker Pro. So we're going to start with a good one and end with a great one, so definitely stick around and see what we've got going on. So to get into the graph, you can either go to Manage Database, or I really love the keyboard shortcut Command-Shift-D or Control-Shift-D on Windows. And let's start with the first tip, which is number 10, aligning table occurrences. So a lot of the times you'll see on a graph that's been used, since it doesn't have a snap to guide feature like the FileMaker layouts does, you can just select a bunch of tables and then use this tool here to align the left edges. And then that aligns all of your table occurrences, which is so much better. Really just love that. Tip number 9 is to make layouts and only ever anchor to the leftmost layout in a table occurrence group. The reason for this is if you anchor a layout, for example, like an invoice layout, to this table occurrence, at some point in the future, you're probably going to want to add or delete some portals or some features or some functions for how that works. And you really don't want that part of your customer table occurrence group. You want that just on the invoice part. So that's a pretty strong recommendation I would have. So then when you use the go to related script step, this is part 2 of this tip. So you can have a button that goes to the invoice, and the go to related script step actually will jump from one tog to another, which maybe a lot of people didn't know, but that's a pretty cool feature. So yeah, that's a good one. I won't go into the details of that now, but the go to related script step will actually jump from this tog, and you can say go to related to invoice. And then if the invoice layout is actually based on this table occurrence, it will be in this tog, which is really, really a good thing. Tip number 8, when you're using individual table occurrence groups, togs for each of your groups in your system, I think it's a really good idea to use a short little code like INV for invoice, CU for customer, because it makes it really easy to navigate that, which leads directly to tip number 7, a reason to do that, and that is the graph actually supports type ahead. So if you want to go to the invoice tab tog, you can just type in I, and it goes right to the first letter I. In this case, I actually went to something in item. If I type in IN, it goes to invoice item. If I type in T, I'll go down to the teacher. If I type in C, it goes to class. It kind of jumps around the graph a little bit. So CU is for that one. CL will go to the class one right here. Or actually, that's just C. So it's really, really useful to do that. Also, the underscore works also in type ahead. So if I type C underscore, and then it goes right to that particular one as opposed to C and some other letter of the alphabet. Tip number 6 is very often on the graph, you're going to want to be able to have some sort of a note or some hint about what you're doing. So if I want one behind this invoice tog, there's a way to do that, which is the text tool. So if I can just draw a box here, I can put a note in like invoice. And then like who created it and when, and type correctly. And then I can also make another one for like the customer group. So just click on the text tool again and put it behind like so. And then these are also, you can change the style, so I can make the color different. I can make them bold or light, move them around. And they do get selected when you grab a group of fields. So, by the way, if you like this video and you like these tips, definitely click the subscribe button, because we would like to get lots of subscribers to this channel. The next tip I have is a really important one that I use all the time when I'm making relationships. So, for example, if I'm making a relationship here from customer to some other table, for example, from customer to person. So if I like duplicated that one, I can click this and click duplicate and bring that one down here. So what I do when I make a new relationship is I pretty much never worry about fields that are grabbing the specific field from here to there. I don't really open up the thing and use this tiny little scroll bar because it's too difficult to use. So here's what I do. I just grab any field from here and any field from here, and that selects the relationship, and then I hit Command O or Control O. That brings up the Edit Relationship dialog box. This is a really useful dialog box. And on this screen, it's very simple for me to say, oh, ID company to ID company, and then I just hit Enter to change it, and then Enter again to close. That's so much faster. The second part of this tip is when you do this, a really good thing to do is to have your naming convention set. And so I can go here and copy INV customer, and then over here, it's going to be INV customer person. And so I can do that. Different naming conventions. Some people like to have them backwards so that the first word is actually the base table. I like it that way. I'm just mainly used to it. So another really good tip directly related to this is tip number 4. Sometimes on the graph it's a little bit busy, and so you'll have a lot of fields, a lot of things that are right next to each other really close. Sometimes what we do is, because there's so many, they're going to be really kind of crammed together like this. And it's sort of hard to see which one's which. Clicking on the box is difficult. So here's a really good tip. You can click instead on the table occurrence and then use the left arrow, and that will then move the selected object from the table occurrence to the relationship itself and then to the next table occurrence. So what I do is I click on the table occurrence, hit the left arrow, and then Command O, Control O, which opens up that same Edit Relationship dialog we saw a second ago. That's one I use all the time, and it really saves me a lot of time. Tip number 3, a really good one. I often want to know what the base table is. Of course, you can double click on something and see the base table is person, but you can also hover the mouse over this little arrow and see the source table of that particular table, and also whether it's in a current file or a remote file, and whether access protection is enabled or not. Tip number 2, getting down to the wire, is if you want to replicate a portion of your TOG. So let's say, for example, I wanted to connect several of these things here, and I wanted to copy those and connect them to this invoice. You can option drag. So you drag a box around it by either dragging or command dragging, and then hold down the option key, and then drag, and all the fields come along. I'll take a larger section so you can really see how this works. It's pretty cool. I'll take like maybe this whole thing here and these as well. And if you want to replicate this, you can just drag the whole thing and it all comes out. Each of them gets a number appended to it, and that's but I find that a very, very useful feature. I'll delete those. Okay, now we're into the final tip, which is this, and I love this one. So if you want to find all of the invoice tables, all of the table occurrences that connect to the invoice table occurrence group, the way you do that is you can use this selector tool down here and click Select Related Tables. Select tables with same source table, which is also Command U. And then notice on the graph, several other table occurrences also are highlighted because those are connected. Well, what do you do with that? Well, here's what you do. You can color code them. So if your invoice table you want to be green, and your customer table you want to be red, and I don't actually use color a lot this way, but a lot of people really do. Your person table, maybe you want that to be blue. And then maybe down the road at some point, you're going to add some other new table for customer. So maybe you'll like add customer or person up to here, but you'll have duplicated some other table or just made a new table on there, for person. And so it doesn't have a color anymore. And you connect that to here. Down the road, to clean this up, you can use this same trick. Hit Command U. That selects this new one, and then you can just recolor it, and that sort of cleans up as you go. That is my list of 10 tips for working with the graph in FileMaker. Thanks very much for your time, and have a great day.